by that, I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are usually two best friends who do a deep dive into a new book series, one book at a time. But today we are
We're
three
three
friends.
best friends.
Yay!
We are welcoming back to the podcast Alison Cochrun, the writer of The Charm Offensive, Kiss Her Once for Me, which we've talked about before. Here We Go Again, and out today, Every Step She Takes. So welcome to the pod, Alison.
Yay! Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
We're excited
So
to
glad to
chit
have
chat
you
about this
back.
book. I love all of your works. This one may have been my favorite.
Oh,
Not
thank
gonna
you.
lie, I'm a bit of a Here We Go Again stan. Like I love that book so much.
But every step she takes follows two women in their mid to late 30s going on the Camino, correct? Do you want to tell listeners a little bit about it?
About the book or what the Camino is?
The book and the Camino, what inspired it?
Sure, yeah. So the book is about a woman named Sadie who's 35 and is having like an existential crisis by realizing that she's like maybe gay and did not know it. So i.e., she's me. And so she's like having that moment, and she ends up being able to kind of take her sister's place on a guided tour of the Camino de Santiago. And she decides to do that as a way of like outrunning her gay panic, also kind of like giving herself time to breathe and think, and in the process ends up um, meeting a woman named Mal who kind of helps her have basically her second adolescence or like her queer adolescence, to relive some of the experiences she feels like she missed out on.
So good. What made you kind of want to focus on writing like a mid 30s, like later in life romance?
Well, I'm 38, so that's definitely part of it. And most of my characters, I think my characters have been like inching up in age a little bit, or like maybe Kiss Her Once for Me, they're the youngest. But with Here We Go Again, I think they were like 31 or 32.
Mhm.
And so I was like playing around with like, well, people believe that like 31-year-olds can be this messy. And they seemed like kind of okay with it. So I was like, all right, then we're going to go with like straight up, she's 35. And Mal is, I believe, 38. And so I kind of just wanted to write about people who are my age still figuring it out, because even though I'm like in a very different place in my life than they are in this book, like I still just like don't know what the hell I'm doing. Right. Like I just feel like it's always really helpful or comforting for me to read about characters who are in their 30s and still essentially coming of age. And so I wanted to write that.
You even have
Amazing.
this like moment, hopefully it's not too much of a spoiler, that there's a moment where Sadie is like talking to someone. They're like, what's the point of like going along all these journeys and if we're not able to like learn more about ourselves as we get older? And I'm like, that's such a beautiful sentiment because I feel like there is kind of this idea that when you're younger, you need to figure it all out. You only have a certain amount of time. And by the time you turn 35, you better have it all figured out. So I do really like that you are having your characters continue to learn about themselves and go on these journeys. So it's really refreshing. But,
Yeah.
oh, did you have something?
I was going to literally just say thank you. That's it.
Well, in every step she takes, Sadie is an antique shop owner who finds herself kind of like subbing in for her sister on this trip. And Sadie has to essentially do the blogging for her sister while she's on the trip. And it's a really fun addition to the story to have those little blog inserts and see the comments that people add to them and everything. And they're just a lot of fun to read. And I was kind of wondering, were these additions something that were like pretty easy to write, or was it something that kind of took a little bit of planning to figure out like what would people say? Would this make sense? Or
Honestly, no part of this book was easy to write, because this was the book that I started writing it. Like I got my editor and I came to an agreement on the concept when I was like entering third trimester with my son. And so I literally had just like the end of pregnancy, and then um, I took maternity leave for a while. And then I was basically trying to write most of the book as I was also figuring out like how to be a mom of a like infant. And so the whole process of writing this book was incredibly challenging, which is not what you asked. But the blogs, I feel like, were one of those things where I kept going back and forth on whether or not I was going to have them, and like kind of the circumstances of why Sadie ended up on this trip. I kept changing them and trying to figure out the right move. But ultimately, like I liked the blogs because they were like a really clear way to kind of like see the progress of the
Hmm.
journey.
Yeah, you
And
really
I
see her
think,
growth.
yeah, and I think once I kind of understood that, they were a lot easier. Some of them were super easy to write, like the ones towards the end where she's just like reflecting on stuff that she likes about the trip. Like those were so easy. Some of the middle ones were a little bit trickier, but
I am on Sadie's side that I would totally love to read a blog about boob sweat on a hike. When I read that, and her
I thought
sister was
that
like,
was hilarious.
she was like, no one wants to read about this. And I was like, I would 100% read about
And
that.
then her
yeah, it's
sister
like,
like responding like, "Don't put that in there."
yeah. I mean, obviously, I also am like, yeah, that's real life for me. Like, that's the reality. Is it's questionable. You know,
Yeah,
gets swampy in there.
we have to cover up with so many layers. What else is it supposed to do?
Yeah.
Well, and a huge part about this book is like Sadie's discussion of her body. It was really refreshing 'cause she is, she's someone who's plus size, but the trip isn't about her like feeling plus size. Like it's never a question that she loves her body or she feels strong. Like the question of if she can do the Camino is hasn't trained for it and she's not in shape for it, but it's not like, oh, I'm a heavier set person or I'm fat, whatever term you want to use. But like it was really refreshing as someone who is fat to read about someone who wasn't focusing on losing weight during a walk like this. So what made you like decide to bring that into the character?
Yeah. Well, a lot of it is just narcissism. Like again, right? Like Sadie's journey of coming out later in life and like truly not knowing she was gay until she's 35 is like super similar to my own experiences. For me, it was like 33. But still basically the same in terms of uh just not knowing that part of yourself. And so I just kind of put a lot of different aspects of my own experience into Sadie as a character. And part of that is like I am living in a body that looks very different now than it did 10 years ago. And like part of that is just the natural aging process. Part of that is, I had my son uh, 2 years ago, and I'm actually pregnant right now. And so,
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. So I kind of wanted to write, and like when I did the Camino in 2022, I was at that time, like quote unquote, the heaviest I've ever been.
Hmm.
But I was also the healthiest. Like I was so, because I mean, I did train a little bit to do the Camino. Um, and then was able to do it and feel really good and look so strong in my body. And so I think part of it was just wanting to write a character who looked like me physically, but also was like able to do this physical feat that had nothing to do with her body. And it was, a lot of the characters in the story are throughout the process of the Camino developing a stronger relationship with their body that has nothing to do with weight, with
Yeah.
being fat. It has to do with feeling strong and healthy in a way, like being able to do something that you didn't know you could do.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I
Well,
just
it's
wanted to kind of
beautiful.
write about, yeah, my own
Yeah.
experiences in that.
It's so beautiful because also like I loved even the little notes of like when they're walking, everyone's shifting in how they walk and everyone walks at different
Mhm.
speeds throughout the day. It was just like you have the actual existence of people where I feel like a lot of times in these walks, it's like everyone has their set standard and they're moving along together. And it
Mhm.
was nice to see everyone work, intricately together.
Yeah.
So Sadie is a person who's like going on a trip for really like the first time. She didn't even really ever leave the country. And in contrast to that, Mal is someone who's like always on the go. Like she's running from bad relationships. She's looking for the next thing. She's chasing love all the time. She's always moving. And she's kind of considered like this directionless person who really is dealing with just like a lot of fear and confusion about what she wants in her life. And she's kind of just like searching for a home too. And she's actually done the Camino before, but she has this really unique way of connecting with people and kind of making home, I've noticed. And I was kind of wondering if you enjoy writing characters like Mal that are a little bit misunderstood.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think again, with her as a character, like I gave her a part of myself, which is my like wanderlust. So I am not like Sadie. When I did the Camino, that was not my first time leaving the country. I am not to the extreme that Mal is either, like where she travels constantly. I don't have the money. But travel has always been a really big part of my adult life and something that I love to do, and definitely like a manifestation of my ADHD and my need to like see just like new shit all the time. Like things get really hard for me and my mental health when I feel like I've been stagnant for a long time. And so travel has always kind of been a way to cope with that and to get outside of myself a little bit. And so, yeah, I wanted to kind of give her that aspect since I was writing a book about international travel. Um, but in general, I guess your actual question is like, do I like writing misunderstood characters? And definitely, I like writing characters who are um, I like writing messy characters, and I think Mal is a pretty messy character. You said you like Here We Go Again. Logan, I think, is like one of my messier
I
characters.
love
Like,
Logan.
oh, thank you, because I think all the time I'm like, people really could have hated her. But I
Logan
think,
also is really hard on herself too, where it's just like you're reading about her and you're like, Logan, you're awesome. Be nice to yourself. Like, stop it.
yeah, and so I like writing characters who, um, yeah, are maybe not coping with things like in the best way, but are also doing the best that they can, and like they're on a journey towards getting a little bit healthier themselves.
It is definitely a theme that I've seen throughout your books, but like it's even pointed out even more in this one because a huge theme is it's never too late. And like as someone in their like close to mid 30s, like it felt really healing to hear that, made me cry a lot. So, is there some, what made you take a deep look in this book? Like what was it like writing that kind of healing journey for Sadie and for Mal in some ways?
Yeah, I mean, and again, that goes back to like a lot of Sadie's kind of crisis in this book is that she's realizing like, oh shit, like, am I gay? Like, did I somehow miss all of the clues to that? Like, is that something that I somehow don't know about myself at age 35? Because of course she assumed, if you're gay, or if you're queer, like you know that, and it's not something you have to discover about yourself. But a lot of her anxiety is around this idea of being too late. Oh, it's too late for her to come out because she's 35. And she's like, has all of this, missed time. Like she's lost the time to explore and to figure things out. And truly, like, that's just like pages ripped from my journal that I kept when I was coming out. Like, I mean, those were just my anxieties. And I just had so much fear that somehow, yeah, it was too late. It was too embarrassing, like
Yeah.
that I didn't know this thing about myself. And then what? I was going to start dating women, and I'd never done it before in my 30s. All of these having first times in your 30s when you're like, oh, but I should have,
Right.
that big looming should. And you feel like you should have done all of those things already. And I struggled with that a lot. And thank goodness for like the most amazing therapist ever. Like I spent a lot of time unlearning that. And so it was interesting to write this book years after I had gone through that. So it wasn't like fresh. It wasn't actively how I view my coming out, how I view my 30s, how I view life. But it was just a few short years ago. And so I think it was really healing for me to be able to like see my own growth
Yeah.
in the last couple of years.
As a bisexual woman who came out in her 30s, a lot of your stuff was similar to my stuff. Where I think the first things were me having a conversation with a friend where we were like, I think it's too late to be bisexual. Like, I think we just date men for the rest of our lives. And like, then later I was like, why can't I date? I'm still single. Why would it be too late for me to learn a new skill and like try a different partner? So, and then I
Well,
met
and
my
it
husband like 2 seconds later. So, unfortunately,
I feel like what I didn't know when I was coming out in my 30s is how many people come out in their 30s, and
right.
especially people who were socialized as women.
Mhm.
It seems like increasingly common for, a bevy of reasons in our puritanical culture, right? But like at the time when I was like struggling to come out, I was like,
Yeah.
no, I'm the only one. Like, like my best friend came out with college, like, all the
Right.
things where I was like, no, that was when I was supposed to do it. And if I
Exactly.
haven't done it, like, I can't do it now. I can't go to my friend and be like, hey, this whole time I was a
Me
lesbian.
too. Yeah.
Yeah. What, for 15 years? What are you talking
Yeah.
about? Like it just, all of these things in my head that seemed like nobody else was experiencing it. And what I learned as soon as I started talking about it is that so many people relate,
Yeah.
and so many people come out in their 30s and later. I like get messages. One of my favorite messages ever was from a woman who came out in her like late 60s, and she
Oh,
just
that's
wanted to let me know that she was like, it was so cute. And just, yeah, I think letting
it
go
is.
of that idea of a timeline, the heteronormative timeline, which says,
Yes.
like, of course, you have your first kiss with this person, in this age, and then you date at this age, and, you explore your, sex at this age, and all these different kind of like landmark um, things that we are expected to do in our development. Um, I don't know. I think
They don't
letting
have to
go of
be.
those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Anxiety has this like
yeah.
really awful and unique way of isolating us from
Mm-hmm.
other people. And I thought it was funny, even because I reread Here We Go Again this past week, and there were so many like shout outs to like mainstream media and stuff like that, but there were like moments that made me laugh because the characters were questioning like how they realized that they weren't straight, and a lot of it was like, oh, I was watching this show and I really wanted to be this character, and it made me laugh so much because Hannah has actually said those types of things, and I was like, oh, so it's
Yeah.
lots of people that do have
Mine
that
was
same
more
experience.
taking on the identity of the woman I had a crush on when I had no business. Like I always say Jessica Alba and Dark Angel. I was like, maybe I really want a motorcycle. And later in life, I was like, maybe you just had a huge crush on Jessica Alba, and that's
Oh my gosh,
okay.
I love that. Honestly,
Yeah.
I love that because for me it was always like hyper obsessed with whoever the male love interest was,
Yeah.
right? And like like I would get so invested in that male love interest and not realize like
Right.
actually like
It's actually
nah.
about her. No,
It was
and I
actually about Sarah Michelle Gellar the whole time.
mine was
Like
also
it
there
was
was
Misha Barton, not
it
Adam
was just
Brody.
Misha Barton. Yeah.
Yeah.
Recently, I had a moment where I was describing a movie to my sister-in-law, and I was like, "Oh, I had Evan Rachel Wood, and she was like a violinist, and I became really obsessed with the violinist, and I'm now realizing that I just really liked Evan Rachel Wood, and we're just like,
Yeah.
I should have known earlier."
Really.
Yep.
I
Oh,
became really
there it
obsessed
is.
with
Yep.
violinists.
Yeah.
My wife and I both do that all the time, where we'll be like, oh, looking back, yeah, I think I was into that
Yeah.
thing because of this actress, this girl,
Right.
this, like
Yeah.
oh, yeah, that's right. You just get to constantly like relive certain things that happened in your like adolescence or young adulthood that you're like, oh, now that I know.
Now that I know,
Huh?
I know. So,
Yeah.
Another aspect of your writing that like gets into like self-discovery and awareness is that you write a lot about places and how they can bring about like a lot of deep meaning and help people along their journeys. And I'm thinking specifically of like Here We Go Again and Every Step She Takes because there's a lot of traveling in these. And maybe it's just like me reading them. I'm like so into like the romanticization of it all that I'm just like, oh, this is so magical that you go on this journey and like discover all this stuff about yourself. But I was kind of wondering what it's like for you as an author to write about how meaningful a location or a place or a home can become to someone and their journey of the self-discovery.
Yeah, I love that. Well, like I said, I love travel. I love just being somewhere new and somewhere different. And that's been a really big part of my life, like especially in my 20s, as a way of staying sane while I was teaching. Like I would always know that I was ready for a break because like I would start looking at flights, and I'd be like, all right, spring break is coming. Like, where are we going? And just was always planning a trip somewhere. And I think a lot of that is romanticized, right? Like, and
Mhm.
part of that's just like fiction. So, like, of course, they go to these places and have like epiphanies and have these like meaningful journeys because like that's the whole point of the book. Uh, Whereas I definitely have not had these like profound, meaningful experiences in every place that I've been. Um, but I do find that for myself, like stepping outside of my own like four walls can be so important to my self-reflection. And so I think that's probably a big part of why that plays into a lot of my books. And um, I also just love, yeah, the role that setting can play in fiction.
Mhm.
Um, and and the ways that we can kind of use the atmosphere or the mood of a certain place to capture the feelings of a particular life moment. So
Right. Well, I know you gave Mal your like travel bug, but I also loved in your comments or in your acknowledgments, you said you're kind of a narcissist because you have self-insert characters like Sadie, who you see yourself
always.
in. But are there any other parts of Mal that really reminded you of yourself or you saw in yourself as you were writing the character?
Yeah, I feel like I tend to give different parts of myself to like, and they're both main characters. They both have POV chapters. They're in first person in this book. Um, but Sadie is kind of who I think of as the main character, and Miles who I think of as the love interest, even though they're both going on equal journeys. Um, but I think I always kind of split, yeah, little bits of myself into both characters because I think for me, that's part of like I have to connect with them in some way. There has to be something that like I can truly understand about them as a person. And so with Mal, like much like Logan, and here we go again, the the tendencies to outrun hard feelings, right?
Mm.
Or the patterns of trying to avoid, I think is something that has been very true. Like throughout my,
Yeah.
there is some reason why I didn't know I was gay until my 30s, right? Like, so I think that's a big thing for me that I give um, to a lot of my characters. And yeah,
So community is really another important aspect of your writing and your books. And there's actually like this really fun and beautiful community that's created among the people who are on the Camino with Sadie and Mal. And all of them are like trying to figure out like who they are because even when they're introducing themselves, I'm like, okay, I love just their little background stories. This is so adorable to figure out what they're doing. And a lot of them, weirdly enough, like also didn't know a lot of the rules about how to get involved with the trip and everything, which is very funny. But I was kind of wondering about like when you're building a story, do you find it difficult to create these awesome communities and these really like different types of people?
I find like in general with side characters, um, that it takes me a really long time to fully like flesh them out and like know what their role is in the story. But that's like also true of main characters. Like I'm a writer who has to like write my way to understanding. So like I'll put together a synopsis beforehand, or I'll be like, I'll do a character chart and be like, this is who the character is, and like here are their wants and needs and what they're gonna overcome. And like none of that ends up true by the end. Because a lot of it for me is just the exploration of like writing the scenes, like writing dialogue, like writing moments in their head and being like, oh, I think this is like more core to who they are, and then kind of reshaping the story around that. So it just takes me a really long time to get to know my characters. And with side characters, like some of them, like Stefano in Every Step She Takes is like vaguely based on a real person. And so
I love
um
Stefano.
yeah, he was really easy. And like I wanted to give him all this depth. I had like a whole side plot for him. And my editor was like, no, I don't think he needs it. I don't think like let's just let Stefano be Stefano.
Let's
Like,
just have him doing burpees in the background. It's
yeah,
fine.
it's
Like,
fine.
Just
And
runs a
so
10K in the morning.
yeah. And so I was like, okay, all right, I'm just gonna let Stefano be Stefano and like not give him like all of these layers. Um, and so he's a character that was like pretty easy to write. Um, but yeah, like side characters, it often takes me a long time to figure out like, okay, like what's their function? Like, what do I want? Especially important ones, like Inez in this story is like a very close friend of Mal's. And so she's really like important in terms of understanding how they play off of each other. And yeah, that takes me until like developmental edits, like line edits at the end, like working with my editor.
awesome. Well, and the community, I just think it's so natural because it has like self-reflection in and of itself where people are like, I think we're just camp friends. We may not see each other, but then like right after they're traveling to go see each other. So it's
Yeah,
really
they're
nice.
messaging each other, they're getting matching tattoos. Like they form a community.
Uh,
the I always think of the end of Every Step She Takes as being like the montage at the end of the season of like Great British Bake Off, which is
oh
always my
yeah.
favorite part. You know, you watch GBBO, and then at the end you get to see how like all of these adorable British people are like friends and like
Yeah.
taking little like mini holidays to see each
Mhm.
other, and it's just like so precious and heartwarming. And I was like, how do I? That's what I want to create at the end of this is like the GVVO montage of just like sweet British people being kind to each other.
You did well. Well, and for listeners, not huge spoilers, but Sadie finds herself on a queer kind of tour of the Camino, and it was not expected, and it was very scary when she just came out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Uh, well, and bringing it back to Sadie, you are someone who really gets to the heart of a lot of people's internal struggles. One of Sadie's struggles is inheriting her grandmother's antique store, and she does love part of it, but throughout the story, she comes to terms with not feeling fulfilled. Is there something that you hope readers take away from that part of the story?
Gosh, that's a great question. I mean, I think this ultimately the same thing as her, you know, late in life coming out that like it's never too late to learn more about what you want out of life, right? And so for her, it's just um that she has never really given herself space to question what she wants and has gone along with this this dream that her grandmother had of this antique store uh and in the same way that she has just kind of gone along with what would make her grandmother happy in that regard, she's gone along with dating men her whole life because that is what she assumes she'll do, you know, like that is what society and like her mother tell her. And so I think, you know, I think those kind of parallel storylines are just meant to reflect this idea of like, yeah, but you can also be 35 and maybe you're not discovering that you're queer at 35, but you're discovering like, I hate my job. Like, this isn't for me. You know, I studied this thing in college. I thought this is what I had to do. And like, it's not fulfilling me. It's not bringing me joy. Like, it's, it's not too late to continue learning new things about yourself.
Kind of
Amazing.
building off of that question that Hannah had, many of the characters that you write deal with like familial pressure, where they either think that they have to like run a business because their loved ones did, or they have to stay home to take care of a loved one, or that they have to maintain certain responsibilities. And I always find that like really relatable when reading, because there is this weird type of pressure that does exist in some families where they're like, oh, we're going to pass this down to you, or you're obviously the next person who will care for this person in our family. And so I was just kind of wondering why it was important for you to highlight these types of characters who have this specific type of situation or an anxiety or a pressure that is like put upon them by their loved ones.
I honestly have that is a great question because that is not my experience at all with my life. Like my parents well, none of them own businesses. And also like I have really loving, supportive parents who have always just kind of let me do what I want and find my passions in life. Um, and so I think putting that in familial conflict is one of those ways of um, like exploring like internalized societal pressure, right? Like I think that is something I've dealt with a lot. And like a lot of it is my assumptions about societal pressure. I don't even know. Does that make sense? Like, it's
No,
not
that
even
makes sense.
real. It's like, well, honestly, like, nobody actually gives a shit if I'm gay, right? Like, it's fine. My
Yeah.
parents sure didn't, like, it's okay. But I had this idea in my head of like, well, this is what I'm supposed to do. There is this pressure to like, to be a certain way, very ingrained perfectionism. And so I think I like exploring that, but through familial dynamics is a way to kind of play around with it that actually isn't too close to my real life. Because I mean, my family has has its issues. But like I'm so incredibly lucky to have like amazingly supportive parents. And so yeah.
I do find that really interesting though that you mentioned that like that's a little bit opposite from your experience because I do feel like that is very much like something that I've noticed and at least the two books where it's like Logan felt like this intense pressure to be like I can't leave my dad and I feel like Sadie in this book she's got a little bit of pressure from her family to be like I have to continue my grandma's antique shop and so I do feel like that does kind of exist in some of your characters.
Yeah. And like in Kiss Her Once for Me, there's a lot of that same like
Hmm.
familial dynamics
Yeah.
of like um what it means to like live up to your parents expectations or to choose not to live up to your parents expectations. Yeah, honestly, I guess those are just themes I really like that subconsciously. And I don't know why. I don't know what that says about me. Maybe I'm just
It's probably better
creating.
off that you're not dealing with that type of pressure because
Well,
No.
like I can personally relate to certain aspects of that, like not exactly similar like situations, but like personally I find those characters and those situations relatable because I'm like, oh, well, I have similar situations in my own life. It's really making me feel seen to have a character in the book going through something like that. But it's a lot of
Yeah.
pressure and anxiety.
Yeah, yeah. And I think like I know people in my life who've had similar experiences around caretaking, around family legacy, or just like I think Sadie's whole issue is that she has this assumption that she has to take care of everything and that like she has to continue this antique shop. But like again, is that pressure coming from other people or is that entirely internal pressure
yeah.
that she is putting on herself
Mhm.
and saying like well I have to do this, like I have
Right.
to be the oldest daughter, I have to like be the responsible one who is going to just like take care of everything because my mom
Mhm.
is not able to fulfill that role and I have this little sister. So I don't know, I think yeah, I don't know, messed up families, I don't know,
Well,
man.
Everybody has one.
you
So
also, I think you just love family dynamics because I've noticed it where it's like you have families who are close and families who are apart and families who are like so intensely close or like distant, like parents or people who've made mistakes in their life. Like I feel you have a deep-seated connection to familial ties throughout your works.
I do, yeah. And everything but my first book.
Yeah.
And that's honestly only because it wasn't possible to like shoehorn the parents into that
yeah.
story. There was too much other stuff going on. I tried several times. But yeah, no, I do like exploring um, familial dynamics because I think,
And found family as well, because I feel like in all of the books, well, in the three for sure, there's also this aspect of creating a family too
Hmm.
that is there. So,
yeah, yeah. I just think like it's hard when you're writing a romance to not look at the influence that like our family plays on our understanding
mhm.
of all types of love, like in the same way that it's really hard to write a character who doesn't have like any friends. And that was like writing Sadie a little bit because like she is a pretty isolated character versus Mal who has like the best friend Michelle that she called, right? Like the that
Mhm.
connection. Um, but I think, yeah, I think it's hard for me to think about writing a romantic relationship without considering the ways that like our other relationships play into that.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Beautiful message. So this one is a lighter one, but through this, Sadie gets to have kind of a transformation where she starts like going to different bars she never expected, or cutting her hair, or she has like these like physical manifestations of ways she's changing. Was it, and like throughout it, Mal kind of calls herself her like, fairy godmother for
Yes.
the queer community.
Mhm.
Was it kind of fun playing with this like very like deep dive into someone joining the queer community and kind of becoming truly themselves?
Yeah, it was. What was one of those things where like I I think it was in how I pitched the story to my editor, and then I kind of shied away from it for a while, and my editor was like, "No, that's the part I like. Like play that up more." And so like using it as this kind of like journey through a second adolescence was, yeah, it was really fun. It's also really hard, right? Because like queer people aren't a monolith. Like, Sadie in the book, like, kind of comes to the conclusion she's a lesbian. Like, lesbians aren't monoliths, right? There
Right.
aren't like certain fundamental experiences we all have. And so it was kind of playing around with like, but what are some of the things that we expect the American teenager to do, right?
Yeah.
Like the straight American teenager, right, is supposed to like sneak out and like, go to parties and like, oh, you're supposed to like have your first crush in this age, and you're supposed to hold hands with someone and kiss, all these like that pressure that we put on, like we were talking about earlier, those kind of like milestones of your sexual adolescent development. And so a lot of it was playing around with that, but then getting to like twist it and make it happen to someone in their 30s who's gay. Uh, but yeah, like the cutting the hair, honestly, the cutting the hair and the getting a tattoos were also just like my own life experiences. And so again, it was just me being like, oh yeah, I'm gonna put that in there. Like that was a big moment for me. So I'm gonna put that.
I love that you get little time capsules through your books of like, I remember when I
Mhm.
did that. Like you're revisiting
Yeah.
your past.
Yeah, for me it was like I wrote the first draft of my first book, The Charm Offensive. Um and which is what made me, I like wrote it and was like, oh shit, like I'm definitely queer. Um and then like that same week, because I like wrote it and I wrote the first draft in like a week. That was really like manic and insane. And then at the end of that week, I chopped off all my hair um and like got my first ever tattoo.
Oh,
Um
beautiful.
And it still took me like a year after that to come out to anyone. But at that moment of time, I was like, it was so, those things were all so ingrained because I was like,
Mhm.
oh yeah, like that was, I had always had long hair as an adult. And like it was a very big part of like my identity, people were always
Yeah.
like, oh my God, you have such pretty thick hair, blah, all the things. And then I was like, F it, and just chopped it all off. And that felt really pivotal.
I do like that it was mentioned too in the book about how it's very much like hair length is very much like connected to the hetero lifestyle, really, and how people just assume like, oh, woman, long hair, hetero. And it's like, no, no, don't do that. No, that's
Yeah,
not a
it
thing.
turns out I actually love having long hair. Like I prefer my long hair over
Hmm.
my short hair. But at that moment, right, I was like, haha, this is my like, I'm sticking it to the patriarchy.
Oh,
Like,
Yeah.
I
I'm
got
cutting it off.
I got married and cut all my hair off to here, and I was like, is there something going on where I was like, I have to get away from that?
Yeah, you're just like, I gotta, yeah,
I need a
I'm
change.
trying to like fight against beauty standards in some
Yeah.
Mhm.
capacity. And so I feel like that was really, yeah, pivotal.
Well, in your books, grief and the processing of grief are really like big parts of it. And I love that you have written two books that show how impactful death can be. So in Here We Go Again, the characters are in this like really long grieving process that is a huge journey. They know it's going to happen. They're grieving their beloved teacher and mentor friend, Joe. And in every step she takes, Mal is dealing with a much more complicated type of grief where her father that she didn't really have the best relationship with, and she's still kind of like rebelling against in a way after he's dead. What was it like writing these different types of loss and the characters' responses to them?
Yeah, so and here we go again. It felt more like I was writing the experience of like losing my own grandparents.
Mm.
Like I especially with the end of that book where he's actively dying. A lot of that was just based on my experiences with my grandparents passing away and just like the way that that process looks and the way that you're kind of grieving along the way and by the end you're at least for me, especially with my grandpa who passed away while I was writing the book, like you start to hope for it at the end, right? Because he had
Yeah.
such a long, drawn out decline.
Mhm.
Whereas, like, in every step she takes, I liked the idea of her complicated grief, like, in that that was writing more not from a personal experience, but like I have a lot of people in my life who are estranged from parents or dads in particular. And like what it looks like to lose someone who in a lot of ways you feel like you already lost.
Mhm.
And like, I think for Mal, like she thought she'd already grieved that loss, right? Because they were so estranged. But I think what she's kind of learning throughout the process is that, she never fully did.
Mhm.
Like she never fully dealt with that rejection from her father or like that dysfunction.
Yeah.
And so I think she's just it's a lot more after the fact. And of course, like they're really different. Like here we go again. Joe is like a character who we see alive on the page, whereas like
Mhm.
in every step she takes, her dad has already died. And she is beginning the trip. So
Well, and something I really loved about every step she takes is the fact that at the end, knowing someone felt a different way or was trying to take steps, but then being vague about it, like sometimes that's still not enough, and sometimes you can
Right.
still say like that wasn't enough to repair our relationship or
Mhm.
make me see it differently. And I think that that's really lovely because I think in a lot of other
Mhm.
works that I've read, usually it's like, well, the parent was reaching out in the best way they knew how, and then it's like, oh, everything's changed now, and she's kind of like, no, not everything has
Right.
changed. Like,
yeah, like it wasn't that was the best he could do. Like,
right.
Mhm.
yeah, okay. Well, that wasn't, I think um I don't know. I feel like again, not because of my own experiences with my parents, but because of the experiences of people I love and um, their parental relationships. Like I have definitely a millennial view on parental estrangement and boundaries, um, and by that I just mean like, I don't think that we owe our parents,
Mhm.
um, anything like as
Yeah.
adults, and if those relationships aren't healthy and if those relationships are harmful, like then we have every right to create those boundaries. And um and so I kind of explore that in Kiss Her Once for Me as well. But in this book, yeah, I also just like I get really outraged at the idea of like, well, the straight person who was super homophobic when you came out, right? Like they're
Yeah.
really trying to change, right? Like, oh, let's give them points because like they were making an effort to accept you. And it's like, no, fuck that.
Right.
Like the bar is so low. No.
Yeah.
And so I think that was definitely part of those feelings coming
Well,
out in the scene at his
that's
funeral.
It's
I don't
it's really
know.
well done
Yeah.
because you're absolutely right in what you're saying that children don't really owe their parents anything. Like I think parents owe their children a lot, but it doesn't really work in that reverse. And like you saying that, like I know someone who's very close to me that is estranged from their father, and I have asked them before, like, oh, so like if your father passed away, do you think you would go to the funeral or anything like that? And they're like, I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know. And I think, like you're saying, it's one of those things like you have to think about like the safety of the relationship and do we actually owe them anything if they have created a really harmful situation and been a toxic parent and been really shitty. Like
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I think that's definitely something I'm really interested in, even though
Yeah.
it's not part of my own lived experience. Is like
Mhm.
Right.
it's something I see in people I love.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if you're a huge TikTok person, but there is a man named Sasha who was on The Voice with his dad. And he wrote a song because he's trans, and it's like all about the fact that his grandma, when when she found out who he was, she was totally accepting. And he's like, I don't understand how there can be all this hatred in the world when like my grandma can only talk about how proud she is of her grandson. It's like, oh, that's beautiful, and it makes
that's
me cry every
Mhm.
time.
oh my God, that's beautiful. No, I'm not on TikTok, but I am interested in that heartwarming content. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So, well, I know you said that you did go on the Camino and you trained, but for people who read this book and are suddenly inspired to sign up for their own Camino, can you tell everyone, what you did to prepare, what surprised you on that journey as you like went on the Camino?
Yeah, what I did to prepare for the Camino was have a horrible depressive episode that lasted several months. So that was really my training.
I'm
I
ready.
um so when I did the Camino in May of 2022, it was a one of the worst kind of mental health phases of my life. And I was in what my therapist called like survival mode, where like things were, and I was also waiting. It was a situation where I'd gone off of my Lexapro earlier that year, and then I was switching to Prozac and like waiting for it to reach full efficacy. I mean,
Yeah.
basically, like I was buying my time. Like I was really, really struggling, and um, even though I was like going to therapy twice a week and doing, all of the things, ultimately, like I needed meds to help me with
Yeah.
that. And, and so like I could barely work most days. And so I would get up and I would like do yoga, and meditate as part of trying to take care of myself. And I was really like, I was running at the time. So, um, when I say I trained for the Camino, I mean, I decided to do it like a month before I left. Um, and in between that 1 month I had, I continued running and doing that a lot, um, to help my like endurance and stamina. And then I did a couple of long walks with a backpack. And that was training. Um, and so it wasn't like you don't really have to train for the Camino. It's not like doing the Pacific Crest Trail, right?
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
most of the Camino honestly is like retirees. At least if you go like in the off season, right? Like I went in May, so like young people weren't out of school yet. So it was just like mostly retirees,
Oh, beautiful.
who yeah are like there with their like trekking poles, like doing their thing, like just living their best lives.
They're
um
counting all the birds that they see.
exactly, yeah, like it sounds great to me. And so I think train is not something that you have to do. The Camino is also really adaptable in the sense that like I carried my backpack the whole time. But like it's nothing like you're not carrying a tent, right? You're not carrying
Right.
your rations. Like you're just carrying the stuff that you need every night when you go and stay at a hotel. And so like I chose to carry my bag because that was just like part of what I wanted from that experience. But they have like luggage services.
Oh,
So like
nice.
my parents are talking about doing it and they're like, oh no, we're not going to carry our bag. Like we will just have them drive our bags from hotel to hotel. And I'm
We'll
like,
catch up
great.
later.
Yeah, like that sounds great. Just like you walk with like your really light day pack that has like some snacks, and like your luggage will just be at your hotel when you get there tonight. And so like there are lots of different ways. It doesn't have to look one way. I even like a lot of people go and they stay in like albergues, which are like hostels for pilgrims who are doing the Camino.
Mm,
And
cool.
if you do that, like they recommend you bring like a sleeping bag and a
Mm.
mattress pad, maybe because the beds are pretty uncomfortable, right? And you're like sleeping in a bunk bed. And it could be in a room with like 40 other people, all the things that come with staying in like a hostel, like bring your flip-flops for showering. Um, and I was like, no, I'm not that depressed. Like, I'm not going to do that. I really my thing about travel has always been I need my own bathroom. Like I'm just very like that's that's the luxury I need. So I went and stayed um in like I stayed in some hostels, but that had private rooms with like
Hmm.
en suites, right? Or I stayed in some like just really low budget hotels and things. And um so I didn't have to carry a lot of gear that other people were carrying.
Right.
Right. So like I think the nice one of the things I really liked about the Camino is that like it's very choose your own adventure. Like you can kind of pick and choose what works for you. Um, and so yeah.
My husband's coworker did just do a different part of the Camino. And I told him about your book and he was like, "Is it like really?" I was like, "Well, it's not an entire like tracking record of the Camino, but it is a beautiful love story with the Camino
Mm,
added in." So,
yeah. Not quite like a guidebook
right.
situation. Well, and that's also a cool thing about the Camino is that like there are so many different routes. Like
Yeah.
the one I did I think is becoming really popular, but like is not the most popular route. Like most people do the Camino Francis, which is like
Yes.
from southern France through Spain.
Mhm.
Um, but I really wanted to go to Portugal, and I'd had a pandemic trip to Portugal and Spain that got canceled, so this was kind of my like makeup for that. Um, and yeah, so I got to choose. You can kind of just choose what you want to do, and some people do like the full Camino Francis is like a 40-day journey. But some people just do like the last 100
Mhm.
kilometers. I did a journey that was 13 days, really, so like, I don't know. It's very fun. You can kind of just pick what works for your schedule.
That's
Well, and that makes it
beautiful.
more accessible to a lot of people too, so
Yeah.
that everyone can have this really cool trip.
Yeah. And like, not everyone will want to. Like, I have a really good friend. We were supposed to go to Portugal and Spain together, and then that got canceled because it was planned for April of 2020. And then I decided to go and do this Camino. I was like, are you interested? Like, what? And she was like, no, I don't need to do that. I don't need to go and walk. I don't think I'd
As you
get
s-
anything
as you
from that.
said earlier, she wasn't that depressed. So,
Yeah, she was like, I don't think so. I don't think like I need. And even recently, she was like talking about doing the Camino again. And then she was like, yeah, I don't think I need that actually. Like, I don't think there's nothing calling me to walk as a form of travel. Whereas I did it once and I'm like, how do I do it again?
yeah.
So
It's so
yeah,
amazing, like the different things that like kind of like snap people's brains into attention. They're like, I need more of this now.
I
yeah,
do wonder if it's our ADHD because I read this book and I was like, I'm ready, sign me up. I can do this. Let's do it.
totally. It's definitely an ADHD thing. And I think this was like right it was either right before I was diagnosed or right after. And so it was like in that spot of being like, oh yeah, like my brain kind of just needs to like go somewhere new
Mhm.
and like have new experiences. And um, like the trip did not cure me. Like my Prozac reached efficacy while I was on the trip, but
Beautiful.
it was still, yeah, it was really positive experience.
Well, I love that. And we're so glad that it inspired this book too, because
Yeah.
it's a great book. Every Step She Takes is out today, listeners. Be
Mm.
sure to get it from your local indie bookstore or your local library. But Allison, are there any other projects that you have coming up that our readers should be looking for?
None that I can talk about quite yet.
Okay, keep it
So
under
stay
wraps. Keep it under
tuned.
wraps. But
It's
where
also
can they find your work?
uh, at wherever books exist. So you find my books. You can find me on Instagram at AlisonCochran.com or my website. Also, just Noah. The .com is the website, not the Instagram. Yeah. So anywhere, anywhere you buy books. I'm sorry that fell apart at the end.
No, you're totally fine. And can you tell our listeners what you are reading, watching, and or enjoying right now?
Yes, I can. Well, I just finished reading Donut Summer by Anita Kelly. And it is their like YA debut. I love all of Anita Kelly's books, and this one also did not disappoint. And then I just started reading a book that's coming out at some point next year by Jenna Voris called The Long Con, which is like sapphic rival con artists
Beautiful.
thrown
Hmm.
together. So like that's already very, very fun. And I highly recommend that one.
Awesome. Well, Allison,
Love it.
thank you so much for coming back. You
Yes,
are
Yeah.
thank
welcome.
you.
Anytime you want to talk about your books, we love every single
Yes.
one of them. So,
Oh, thank you so much. I really enjoyed chatting with you both.
oh, thank you. And listeners, catch us tomorrow for our regularly scheduled content.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.